Good evening, dear listener. I'm glad you're here. Settle in, let your shoulders loosen, let the day drift a little farther away, and allow yourself to be carried by a quieter tide. Tonight, may you feel safe, warm, and unhurried. May your thoughts soften like fog over dark water, and may this story move gently around you, the way a calm canal cradles a small houseboat in the night. There is nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to solve. Only listen, breathe slowly, and rest. You live where the water remembers everything. Not in a grand house with a gate and a stone path. Not high above the street, where windows only know the weather from a distance, but low and near, with your rooms held upon the canal as lightly as a leaf. Your home is a narrow houseboat moored beneath old brick embankments and leaning trees, where autumn has thinned the branches and scattered bronze leaves into the dark. At night, when the city has quieted and the last bicycles have whispered over the bridge, the canal becomes a long, dim ribbon of listening water. Your boat rocks so gently that the movement is less a motion than a thought, and the water taps the hull with small, patient fingers, as if asking every few seconds whether you are still awake. You are. Inside, the air is warm with the day's lingering heat, held in the wood of the walls and shelves and table, and sweetened now by the first faint curl of steam from the kettle. The cabin is lined in honey-colored timber, rubbed smooth by years of touch, each plank carrying a soft glow where the lamplight reaches it. There are brass hooks beside the door, a narrow bench with a folded wool blanket, a shelf of cups that chime gently when the boat moves, and a little stove that radiates the kind of warmth that asks nothing from you, except that you come near and stay a while. Outside, the fog has come early. It lies low over the canal, white and slow and secretive, gathering in the spaces beneath the bridges, and drifting out again with the smallest shifts of air across the water. The lamps along the towpath burn in pale halos, each one enlarged by the mist until it seems less like a lamp and more like a moon caught in a glass globe. Their reflections tremble below, long threads of amber in the black-green water. Sometimes a ripple bends them. Sometimes the boat turns a fraction on its mooring lines, and the whole world outside the window seems to slide a little sideways, dreamlike and untroubled. You stand by the small stove and listen to the kettle night's whisper. Not a boil yet, only a promising murmur, the prelude to tea. Your hands move with unhurried familiarity. One hand finds the tin of leaves, the other the teapot, dark glazed clay warm from the room. When you lift the lid of the tin, the scent rises at once, black tea. A little smoky, touched perhaps with bergamot, or with dried orange peel and spice. Something that suits an autumn night. It mingles with the woody smell of the cabin, with the faint mineral coolness that enters through the seams around the windows, with the ghost of river water and iron and old rope that always belongs to a boat after dusk. You like that your home smells different at night. In daylight, there is the clean scent of boards warmed by the sun, the faint green dampness from the canal, maybe a passing hint of rain in the rope coiled on deck. But now the cabin gathers softer things: tea, wool, lamp oil, cedar from the chest at the foot of the bed, and the tender, almost vanishing trace of extinguished matches. It is the smell of being enclosed and safe while the world outside grows colder and more uncertain. It is the smell of wood that has learned to float. The kettle hums more brightly. You pour the water over the leaves and watch the steam rise in silver ribbons, turning and loosening into the air. For a moment, you hold your hands around the pot, not to warm them, they are not cold, but because the heat feels companionable. Through the window above the sink, the fog presses close as milk glass. The nearest canal lamp glows through it, soft and blurred, and beyond that there is only the suspicion of farther lights, as if another city were hidden in the mist, one made entirely of lanterns and reflections. The mooring ropes creak. It is an old, familiar sound, one you have learned so thoroughly that your body settles when it hears it. The thick lines stretch from your boat to the bollards on shore, dark with damp and strong with years. And when the water shifts beneath you, they answer in low wooden complaints and small fibrous sighs. The fenders knock once against the side. Water touches the hull again. Tap, pause, tap, tap. Then silence, then another faint knock, as though the canal is arranging itself around you for sleep. You pour tea into your cup. The porcelain is smooth and thin, painted with faded blue reeds. You bring it to your face first, breathing in. The steam touches your skin. The fragrance opens tea leaf, citrus, a dry whisper of smoke, maybe a thread of clove. It is enough to make the room seem seem even smaller in the best possible way, as if all the useful comforts of the world have chosen to gather here and nowhere else. Before you sit, you move through the evening's little rituals. They matter not because they must be done, but because they draw a gentle border around the night. You carry your cup to the forward window and close one shutter, then the other, leaving just a narrow seam between them. The hinges murmur. The latch settles with a quiet click. At the next window, you pause longer, because this one looks toward the bridge, and you can still see the lamplight smeared through the fog, soft gold dissolved in gray. Somewhere beyond the bridge, a late bicycle passes, a delicate chain sound, then the brief hollow drum of wheels crossing planks. After that, stillness returns, thicker than before. You close the shutter halfway, then leave it there. You like to keep one eye on the water. At the little stern window, where the canal widens slightly and moored boats rest one after another like dark sleeping animals, you fasten the hooks against the chill. The glass gives back your reflection for a second. Your face lit warmly from one side, the room behind you all amber wood and shadow, the tea cup a white curve in your hand. Beyond the reflection, the fog drifts and rearranges itself. There is always the faint impression that someone or something is moving in it, not with threat, not with hurry, but with the patient grace that belongs to old waterways. You have lived on the canal long enough not to feel alarm at such impressions. Water is full of presences. Most of them are only moods with no names. You set your cup on the table and light the small lamp there, though the other lamp already burns. Its shade is amber glass. When the flame catches, the cabin deepens into richer color, gold on the paneling, russet on the braided rug, copper on the kettle, shadows nesting softly under the shelf of books. The boat tips so slightly that the spoon in the saucer gives a tiny ring. This, too, is familiar. Your home never lets you forget that it is resting on something alive. You sit by the window you left half shuttered and draw the blanket over your knees. The bench cushion dips in the place your body knows best. Beneath you, the boat lifts and settles almost imperceptibly. If someone from the shore stepped inside, they might notice it immediately. The tender uncertainty of a floor that belongs to water. But to you, this motion is the closest thing you know to stillness. It does not interrupt thought. It rocks thought loose from the day and sets it adrift. Outside, the canal is speaking speaking its night language. A tiny wash of current touches the hull, then recedes. A drop falls from the roof edge onto the deck with a hollow tick. The ropes answer the current with a slow creak. Somewhere farther off, perhaps under the bridge, water gathers itself around stone and makes a secretive, gliding sound, like silk being drawn across polished wood. Once in a while, a leaf lands on the surface with a minute wet pat. And if you look carefully through the slit between the shutters, you can see it turning in one of the lantern reflections before it is carried away. It seems impossible that something so small can continue traveling through darkness and fog and always find another piece of water to receive it. But the canal is full of such impossible continuities. You trust them. You take your first sip of tea, and warmth spreads through your mouth, your chest, your hands. The taste is deep and slightly bitter at first, then mellow, then edged with brightness. It feels like drinking a darker form of lamplight. You hold the cup in both hands and look out. The lamp across the canal glows steadily, but around it, the mist thickens and thins in breath-like pulses. Sometimes, when the fog moves just right, the halo widens into a shape like a doorway, a pale arch hanging over the water. You have seen this before on autumn nights. The canal likes to make thresholds of light. They never lead anywhere except deeper into looking, deeper into the quiet. Still, you always feel for a moment that if you opened the door and stepped onto the deck, you might find the usual planks changed beneath your feet. You might find that the towpath has become a silver path over water, or that the bridge has drifted a little farther away than it should be, or that another boat has moored opposite yours, a boat without wake or lantern, waiting in perfect silence for someone to notice it. You are not troubled by such thoughts. They belong to the hour. Night on the canal is allowed its mysteries. You sip again and let your gaze soften. The cabin breathes around you. Wood adjusts to the cooler air with tiny clicks. A book on the shelf shifts almost inaudibly against its neighbor when the boat sways. The kettle, empty now but still hot, makes one last small ticking complaint. The tea sends up a fragrance that seems to gather under the lampshade and drift slowly down again. Everything is contained, gentle, sufficient. Outside there is fog, water, hidden distance. Inside there is tea, wood, warmth, and your own calm company. You have always liked this hour best, hour after the evening's useful tasks and before true sleep. It is not empty. It is full in a quiet way. If mornings belong to movement and the day to errands, then this hour belongs to listening. Living on the water has taught you that listening is a kind of dwelling. You listen to know the weather before you see it. You listen to know whether a passing boat is large or small, far or near. You listen for rain starting on the roof, for the first hard freeze in the ropes, for swans gliding by with a sound like sleeves brushing together. And on nights like this, when the fog has erased the far bank and hidden all but the nearest lamps, listening becomes almost a form of sight. You hear a duck stir somewhere under the stern, rustling softly, then settling again. You hear the brush of reeds against the retaining wall farther down where the canal bends. You hear, faint and improbable, a bell from some distant clock tower muffled by mist, until it seems to come from underwater. The city is still there beyond the fog, but it has retreated into kindness. Its sharp corners have been wrapped. Its distances have been folded. You finish half your tea and set the cup down. The rim leaves a dark ring on the wood, and you smile to see it, because the table is already patterned with such rings. Years of evenings overlapping in pale circles. On shore, people might polish and fret over such marks. Here they are simply evidence of weather, of company, of patience. The table, like the boat, has learned to carry what is placed upon it. A deeper current passes beneath you, perhaps from a lock opening somewhere beyond the bend, perhaps only the canal remembering itself. The houseboat gives a longer, slower sway. The hanging ladle near the stove touches the wall with a light ting. Your shoulders respond before your mind does, easing farther down. The movement is cradle-like, but too wide and subtle to make you drowsy all at once. Instead, it invites every thought to loosen its hands. You lean your head against the wooden frame beside the window. The wood is warm from the room on one side and faintly cool near the glass on the other. Through the gap in the shutters, the lamp's reflection sways, breaks, reforms. The fog thickens until even that is dim. Then it thins and reveals the opposite embankment, wet brick gleaming darkly, ivy black against it. A row of moored boats with their outlines softened as if sketched in charcoal and breathed upon. One of them has a small green light in the cabin. Another has only darkness. A third, farther away, carries strings of tiny amber bulbs along its rail, blurred by the mist into a floating constellation. You know some of the people who live on these boats. You nod to them in the mornings, exchange weather, borrow tools, tie each other's lines tighter before storms. But at night, everyone returns to a private circle of lamplight, and the canal becomes a neighborhood of small glowing worlds, each one suspended on dark water, each one complete. You like that. Solitude here never feels like being abandoned. It feels like being one lantern among many, each burning quietly in trust that the others are there. The tea warms your fingers again when you lift it. The smell is deeper now, settled into itself. You think of adding more leaves and making another pot later, perhaps with a spoonful of honey. There is no hurry. The night is patient. Autumn nights on the canal often feel longer than clock time, as if fog slows the passage of hours, the way moss softens the edge of stone. A movement at the edge of the window catches your eye. Not startling, only soft, a denser fold of mist gliding past the slit in the shutter. You watch it and realize that the fog has begun to travel along the canal in one direction, like a procession. It pours under the bridge in pale ribbons, gathers around the mooring posts, coils briefly around the lamp standards, and slips on. There is something ceremonial in the way it moves. For a breath or two, you imagine the canal keeping vigil with all its old companions, the drowned reflections of houses, the forgotten keys and coins at the bottom, the stories told aboard boats years ago, the names of vanished owners, the laughter and sorrow absorbed by the boards and ropes and water. None of it feels heavy. The canal carries memory lightly. It lets things sink without losing them. You know this because sometimes, in weather like this, the past seems to float a little nearer. A scent appears that is not quite from your own cabin, perhaps peat smoke from a stove on another boat, perhaps damp leaves from the towpath, perhaps the faint iron fragrance of rain that fell earlier on bridge railings and stone. It arrives, lingers, and leaves. Then a small wake touches your hull, though no boat passes. Only a slow curling lift, as if something unseen has moved beneath the reflection of the lamp. The ropes tighten and sigh. The fender knocks once. Tap from the water. Creak from the line. Tick from the cooling stove. Your boat answers each sound with a softness that makes every noise a reassurance rather than a disturbance. You pull the blanket closer and let your feet rest against the opposite bench. The wool smells faintly of cedar and clean, cold air from the last time it was shaken out on deck. The weave scratches pleasantly against your fingers. Nearby, on the shelf, a jar of dried lavender trembles almost invisibly with the motion of the boat. Beside it sits a smooth stone you picked up from a river farther north years ago, and a tiny brass compass that belonged to someone in your family long before the boat was yours. You keep such objects not because you consult them often, but because on water, even small, still things feel like anchors. Your eyes return to the window. The lamp across the canal now seems farther away. Not truly farther, perhaps, but wrapped in so much mist that it has taken on the solemn remoteness of a lighthouse glimpsed at sea. You watch its reflection tremble and narrow into a line. For a moment, you imagine the canal widening beyond all reason, becoming not a city waterway, but a black inland sea threaded with forgotten roots. Your little houseboat its own steady kingdom of tea and lamplight. It is easy on nights like this to believe that the edges of the world are made of fog and can be moved by listening carefully enough. And yet the smallest practical things keep you gently tethered. The cup warm in your hands, the latch you fastened on the shutter, the rug beneath your feet, the spoon on the saucer, the little draft touching your ankle under the door, the familiar bend in the shelf where too many books stand together. These details are your shore. You float, but you are not lost. When at last you rise to refill the pot, the floor shifts beneath you in that tender, waterborne way that asks for one extra breath of balance. You smile at it. In the galley corner, the kettle accepts more water with a hollow glug. You set it on the stove again. Blue flame flickers. The cabin brightens and dims by fractions. On the dark pane above the sink, your reflection overlays the fog outside until you seem to be standing both in the room and in the mist at once. As you wait for the kettle, you place your palm lightly on the wall. Through the timber, you can feel the boat's hidden life, a nearly imperceptible pulse from current and rope and displacement, the whole structure breathing with the canal. Houses on land settle into their foundations and sleep. A houseboat converses all night with water. It never truly stops noticing where it is. Perhaps that is why you sleep well here. The boat keeps a kind of watch for you. The kettle begins its low, singing again. You prepare another pot of tea, this time sweeter, with a little honey that catches the lamplight like liquid amber. As you stir, the spoon circles the cup with a sound clear and delicate as a tiny bell. Somewhere outside, in answer or coincidence, another faint bell drifts through the fog. The two notes seem to linger together for a second, inside and outside, near and far. You carry the fresh cup back to the bench and lower yourself carefully into the same warm hollow as before. The blanket receives you. The window waits. The canal, finding you still awake, resumes its quiet tapping at the hull. Tap, pause, tap, as if saying yes, yes, yes. Your breathing follows it without effort. In the half-shuttered view, the mist parts just enough to reveal the bridge. Its arch is dark and old, beads of moisture silvering the stone. Under it, the canal disappears into whiteness. You have passed beneath that bridge 100 times in daylight, ducking your head out of habit, though there is room enough. You know exactly what lies beyond it. Another stretch of embankment, another row of trees, another turning. But tonight, the arch looks like the entrance to a place that exists only after midnight, a place made of slower time and deeper quiet. You do not need to go there. It is enough that it is possible. The story of the night goes on without requiring you to follow every thread. A pair of water birds move somewhere unseen, leaving soft V-shaped trails that catch and break the lantern reflection. A leaf skates briefly along the surface and disappears under the bow. A rope knocks gently against a mooring post, then rests. The fog draws close to the window, then loosens its hold. Each small event arrives complete and vanishes complete, leaving no demand behind it. You think, not in words exactly, but in feelings easy as the sway beneath you, that this is why you chose this life, or why it chose you. To live on water is to let certainty become softer around the edges. The floor may shift. The weather may speak through ropes and windows before you name it. Light may double itself in reflections and seem to come from below as much as above. And in return, you are taught a different kind of peace, one that does not depend on everything staying still. Here, peace is the art of moving gently with what moves. The tea is almost gone again. The warmth in the cup has become a lingering comfort in your hands. Your eyelids grow heavier, not from fatigue alone, but from the sheer kindness of the room. The lamps cast smaller circles now. The edges of the cabin have melted into soft shadow. The books, hook by the door, the curve of the kettle, the folded scarf on the bench. Even the wood grain seems to have relaxed, dark lines flowing like tiny rivers through gold. You rise one last time. This time, you close the half-open shutter completely. The outside lamp becomes a thin blade of light at the edge, then vanishes with a click of the latch. At once the cabin feels deeper, more sheltered, as if the night has placed both hands around your home to protect its flame. You bank the stove a little lower. You rinse the cup. You hang the towel by the sink. Each act is small and exact. Each one folds the evening inward another layer. Then you stand for a moment in the center of the cabin and listen. Water against the hull, ropes in their slow wooden sigh, the nearly silent settling of warm wood, a drop on deck, a far bell softened, the boat's faint, continuous cradle. All of it says the same thing: you are held. When you finally move toward bed, the floor gives under you with that familiar, floating courtesy. The blanket on the berth is cool when you lift it, then warm within moments. Above you, the low ceiling curves softly. Nearby, the hull answers the canal with one gentle knock, then another, as if some patient nocturnal hand were tucking the water in around you. The smell of tea still lingers in the room, now quieter, mixed with timber and wool, and the damp sweetness of fog beyond the shutters. You lie on your side and listen to your houseboat speak with the night. Beyond the wood, the canal slides under bridges and past sleeping windows. Fog drifts where streets once felt certain. Lamps keep their blurred vigil. Leaves turn slowly in black water and continue on. Somewhere other boats rock in their own small circles of warmth, their occupants perhaps already dreaming, perhaps also listening with a cup in hand. The whole canal is awake and drowsy at once, like a long, half-remembered song. The boat sways, not enough to be noticed by anyone who does not belong to it, but enough for you, enough to smooth the last roughness from thought, enough to remind you that even here at rest, you are traveling a little through mist, through autumn, through the patient hours of night. Water taps the hull. Rope creaks. Wood murmurs. Your breath finds the rhythm and keeps it. And as sleep comes closer, the canal's soft mysteries do not fade so much as open wider around you. The fog beyond the shutters becomes a pale, protective veil. The hidden reflections continue their trembling dance where you no longer need to see them. The bridge waits in silence, far at once. Drift the way your home drifts, securely tied, lightly borne, held between shore and current, between lamplight and mist, between waking and dream. The tea's warmth remains in you like a small ember. The wooden cabin breathes around you. The night, watery and old and kind, keeps watch. And the last thing you hear before sleep takes you fully is the quiet, faithful sound you know better than any lullaby. The water softly knocking at the side of your houseboat, as if the canal itself has come to wish you good night.